Part 3. Madam, She Has a Tender Heart. Author, Ba Jiaoye 11U. Chapter 22. Aunt Su is Su's father's half-sister, 2 years older than Su's father. She married into a village in the next town, lived a hard life, and gave birth to 2 sons and 2 daughters. The eldest son is married and has a 7-year-old son, the eldest daughter is married, and the younger son and daughter are not yet married. My eldest cousin Zhou Dazhuang was taken away during the military conscription 2 years ago, and now there is no news. The family only has 2 or 3 acres of land. Usually, the land cultivated by the tenant landlords is not enough for the whole family. My eldest uncle often led his younger cousin to cut slate slabs in a nearby stone quarry to earn some hard money. Su Qingying's wedding day was delivered to his home early, but no one showed up until Su Qingying was about to leave. Ms. Wang and second Aunt Su said a lot of sarcastic words. As soon as Su's father finished speaking, Su's mother became anxious. Did something really happen to the eldest sister's family? She usually loves our children so much, and asks people to bring them whatever food they have. This Qingying is getting married, and her family is alone. None of them came. Mom and Dad, don't scare yourself. Maybe my uncle is in a hurry at the stone quarry work. My eldest cousin is not at home, and the family is busy saving copper coins. Didn't my aunt ask someone to send her some extra makeup? After listening to Su Qingliu's words, Su's father was still in a state of confusion, thinking about the extra makeup sent by his eldest sister. 6. Su Qingying glanced at them and said comfortingly, "On the day I come back, isn't my cousin going to get married? We'll see if they come then. If they don't come, then Dad will ask someone to go and see." Su's father nodded, "Well, if they haven't come that day, I will go and see for myself." While talking, many people in the village came to see the bride, and the word stopped. Although the Su family did not hold a wedding banquet today, it was rare to see any happy events in the village. Everyone in the village who had free time came to see the bride. Several little sisters who were usually close to Su Qingying also gathered in the room to tease Su Qingying. At the beginning of the month, the sound of happy gongs was heard outside. Today's auspicious hour is the 3rd hour of Shenzhen. In addition, it is still some time away from the town. It has just arrived at SI hour, and the bride and groom have arrived outside. It seemed that Lu Bachan got up earlier than her. The invited village chiefs had not yet arrived, and the table had not been set. Su Qingying didn't even have time to take a bite of the meal when others arrived. After entering, I was surrounded by people. Lu Bachan's face was as red as if he had applied several layers of rouge. There is no such thing as sitting in a wedding sedan when getting married in the countryside. It is just a matter of leading an ox cart to take the person and the dowry back, and that's it. Those who are not in a good condition have to walk on 2 legs. Kyoto village is far away from Fengting town, and it is not practical to take a sedan chair. Lu Bachan hired 2 carriages. The first carriage was made to look like a wedding sedan. The wedding carriage was rented in the town, and the other was used to carry the dowry. The carriages are all dressed in red and colorful, which is extremely festive. Xiao Qing, Yang, and Xiao Qingxian came back after taking a look and chattering to Su Qingying. Before she could chat about what it would be like to get out of the carriage and wedding sedan, the 2 little things went out to watch the fun again like a storm. Until she said goodbye to her family, put on her hijab and was carried out by Su Saiquan, she didn't even get a clear look at the wedding sedan. I could only hear Su's mother's sobbing voice echoing in my ears, and the sound of the carriage driving across the road as it gradually left Kyoto village. The joyful sound of gongs and drums echoed in the village. Sudahu hid in the woods, his mind empty, staring at the wedding team ahead, watching the wedding car drive away from his sight little by little, until his vision gradually blurred and he could no longer be seen. My heart is empty. The car swayed all the way, and every time it passed a village or stepped on a bridge, Lu Bachan would sit on his horse and light firecrackers himself and throw them out. There was joy on his face. They were teased by Lu Juyi and others who came together to pick up the bride. Listening to the sound of firecrackers, the joyful sound of gongs and drums, and the joking of a group of energetic young men, Su Qingying finally felt a little bit real in her heart. She is married. How fresh. Stuck Point, the welcoming team entered the town at the first moment of Shenqi, and welcomed the newcomers in at the third moment of Shenqi. After passing the brazier, they worshipped heaven and earth in the main hall and were led into the new house. Su Qingying let out a long sigh of relief when she sat on the bed in her new house. Sitting upright all the way, her back was sore everywhere. After picking up the hijab and drinking a glass of wine, Lu Bachan explained a few words to her and was dragged out. Su Qingying sat alone in the wedding room, thinking about Lu Bachan's appearance just now. It's only been a few days, but this guy seems to be different. He doesn't look as cynical as he did when we first met him. At that time, he was naughty and seemed to not care about anything and didn't take anything seriously. He is now. Su Qingying thought about how he looked when he lifted his hijab. Well, how should I put it, my whole person seems to have settled down, my eyes have content, and they are not so wandering anymore. Is it true that as soon as a man gets married, his role changes, and as he becomes an adult, his temperament also changes? Su Qingying was thinking as she took out the cakes on the table and looked at the new house while eating. The new house is bright red, and the bedding on the bed is also dazzlingly red. The wardrobe, trunks, tables, and stools in the room, as well as small items such as the mirror and clothes hangers that her family sent yesterday. It was larger than the room she and the twins shared. The top is also high. The bed is also big and the curtains are new. Su Qingying looked at it and put away the Zhaoshengaizi and other things on the bed, and put one or two into her mouth. In the new house, Su Qingying was thinking about Lu Bachan's change. Lu Bachan, who was being drunk at the banquet outside, was also thinking about the Su Qingying he had just met. She seemed not so dark anymore, and her face seemed to have gained some flesh. But before he could think about it, he was dragged into drinking by a group of bad friends, and the image of Su Qingying in his mind was blown away by the alcohol. After midnight, Su Qingying ate the meal sent by the Lu family's helper, took a short rest, washed up, and waited for Lu Bachan in the new house. It wasn't until night fell and the sounds of people eating and drinking outside gradually subsided that Su Qingying waited to return to Lu Bachan. Madam, she has a tender heart. Author, Bhaya 11U. Chapter 23. I don't know if it was because he usually hangs out in the wine shop, but even though Lu Bachan was drunk, when he returned to the room, his eyes were clear and his steps were not wandering. Although she smelled of alcohol, Su Qingying breathed a sigh of relief when she saw that his steps were steady. She didn't want to serve a drunkard. After Lu Bachan washed away the smell of alcohol, the newlyweds sat together under the same roof tonight, and when their eyes met, they suddenly felt a little embarrassed. This arranged marriage, which is arranged by parents and arranged by a matchmaker, is somewhat screwed up. The two newlyweds, who had never communicated in depth and whose faces were barely visible, were suddenly speechless at this moment. Lu Bachan looked at Su Qingying, one after another, obviously he had something to say. Su Qingying rolled her eyes before he could speak. I have something to tell you. Su Qingying had no choice but to speak first. Lu Bachan breathed a sigh of relief. He was not so nervous when he went to Hualu for a drink. He nodded repeatedly. I also have something to tell you. Then tell me, Su Qingying said. You say it first. After Lu Bachan finished speaking, Su Qingying wanted to roll her eyes again. Never been alone with a girl? He looked so helpless, like a lamb about to be eaten alive by her. Although she was ready to eat him today, his appearance suddenly made it difficult for her to eat. Modern professional women can earn money, take care of a family, and raise children. Instead of waiting for a man to cheat and then divide the family property and snatch the children, it is better to take care of the children alone and live a quiet life without so much tears and sadness. Too many career women have learned to be independent. Su Qingying was also frightened. She was somewhat insecure. What's more, the ancient times were characterized by monogamy and multiple wives. A person can be very lonely in this era, and she wanted to have a child. I want a child. Su Qingying thought about it and said it. No, Lu Baqin didn't hesitate this time and said firmly. Tell me your reasons. Su Qingying looked at him lightly. Lu Baqin looked at Su Qingying's dark eyes, which were so deep and indifferent, that he suddenly felt scared again. He lowered his head. It took a long time to organize the words, and I thought that my words were sincere. You know, swords and arrows have no eyes on the battlefield. I may die in the first battle. If I die, it will be difficult for you to raise a child and get married. When the time comes, others think your child is a drag, and he will be looked down upon in other people's homes, making it difficult for you. So he didn't even think about consummating the marriage with her today. If he is lucky enough to come back and she can wait for him, then they will be reunited as husband and wife, and they will not have to worry about having children. Su Qingying heard what he said and didn't take his kindness to heart. The two people have different concepts. When she knew she was going to marry Lu Baqin, she was happy for a while. Spanning such a long period of time, some generation gaps may be insurmountable. If we get along day and night, if we share the same bed and have different dreams, and hate each other, it is better to live a quiet life alone. I don't want to get married again. I told you when we first met that I will wait for you at home and take care of your housework so that you don't have to worry about anything. If you have something in mind, I won't marry another person. If you don't have different intentions in the future, if we can come back alive, we will naturally live a good life together. If you have different intentions, we will naturally separate. Su Qingying said calmly. Lu Baqin thought for a while and then said, then you wait until I come back. Then, let's have another child, okay? In this way, no matter what happens, I have someone else, or I am gone, or you in the future if your mind changes, you can get married without any worries. Su Qingying looked at him coldly. You do think about me, so you think there will be someone else in the future? No, no. I promised my mother that men can't have second thoughts. I promised my mother that if I marry a wife, I will be devoted to her and live a good life with her. When Lu Baqin heard this, he stood up anxiously, waved his hands and swore. Su Qingying looked at him without much belief. When his father married his mother, he probably never thought that he would fall in love with another woman. A man who cheats doesn't know he will cheat until he meets the person he cheats on. So we should make an agreement. If we have a child and you have second thoughts in the future, the child will belong to me, and you don't need to interfere anymore. So, wouldn't it be better if you wait for me to come back and have another child? If anything happens, this will be good for you. No need. If I don't get married anymore, it would be better to have a child. If I set up a female household, there won't be so many people bothering me, and I don't even have to pay the poll tax. Faced with Su Qingying's strength, Lu Baqin failed to convince her, and was pulled into an agreement by Su Qingying. Although this guy is not very good at reading, he can actually read the handwriting. Silverhook iron painting has its own style. Su Qingying picked up the agreement and blew the ink on the paper, then carefully folded the agreement and put it away. Lu Baqin was a little puzzled when he saw her reading the content on the paper word by word, as if this country girl could read. After the two of them reached an agreement, the next step was naturally a matter of course, and they did all the things that a newcomer should do. Lu Baqin, a stupid young man, was both novel and excited that night. After finishing the work, he stayed up all night and stared at Su Qingying's sleeping face in the warm and dancing candlelight of the wedding candle. Lu Baqin knew something was different. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Madam, she has a tender heart. Author, Bhaya 11U. Chapter 24. Early the next morning, Su Qingying woke up with pain all over her body and was shocked to find Lu Bachan leaning on the bedside looking at her. Lu Bachan looked away embarrassedly. Su Qingying rolled her eyes at him, cleaned herself up under his attentive service, and let the man lead her to the kitchen. The Lu family usually hires a woman to help cook 3 meals a day and take care of some housework, but she does not live at home. She comes every morning and goes home after cooking in the evening. Her home is also in the town. On this day, Lu Bachan's stepmother did not let the woman come. In the local area, it is a tradition for newlyweds to cook soup for their father-in-law as their first meal on the day after they get married. Su Qingying didn't say anything. When I got to the kitchen, I looked around and started working. The kitchen is fully stocked with firewood, rice, oil, salt, sauce, vinegar, whole grains, vegetables, meat, rice, and noodles. The kitchen was also larger than the Su family's, with a higher roof, and was kept very clean by the helpers, which saved Su Qingying the effort of cleaning up. After asking Lu Bachan's family about their preferences, they started taking action. Seeing that he was still wandering around the kitchen, he ordered him to fetch water and light the fire, and he worked hard. When Su Qingying prepared several breakfast items and brought them to the main room with Lu Bachan, Lu's father, stepmother Wu, and others did not show up. Su Qingying looked at the delicious breakfast on the flower table and drooled. I got up early in the morning and worked hard for a long time. I didn't even bother to drink water. My stomach had already protested. Fortunately, it is summer now. If it were winter, the oil would have frozen the vegetables. Looking at Lu Bachan again, he clenched his hands, his face was full of anger, and he was about to lose his temper. Su Qingying hurriedly pulled him over. Tell me about your family. Lu Bachan was so angry that he immediately lost his temper. Taking advantage of the situation, he took her to sit down on the chair and told her about the Lu family. Lu's father and Lu's mother lived in the next village back then, so the elders knew each other. Lu's father has been restless since he was a child. He doesn't like working in the fields, so he likes to run outside. He didn't like the 3 melons and 2 dates in the field, so he liked to go out and think about ways to make money. After I saved some money, I bought goods and worked as a salesman in various towns and villages. When it was time to get married, few families were willing to give him their girl. The older generation prefers men who are down to earth and take care of their families. But Lu's mother took a fancy to him and insisted on marrying him regardless of her parents' objections. The Lu family was very happy and quickly arranged a marriage for the two of them. I also have high praise for this diligent and honest daughter-in-law. The couple gradually enlarged the peddler's responsibilities, turning the load into a bullock cart and hiring assistants. I sold more goods, traveled further and made more and more money. A few years later, Lu Bachan was born, and Lu's mother wanted to settle down. The only son of Lu Bachan's maternal grandparents at that time had an accident and died before he was a family member. Lu's mother became the only support. When he saw that his daughter and son-in-law wanted to settle down, he was overjoyed. He sold several acres of land at home and gave all his savings to his daughter and son-in-law. The couple gained the wealth of the Yu family and soon bought a shop in Fengting town and opened a grocery store. Their days were prosperous and they gradually settled down. When Lu Bachan was 3 years old, Lu's father went out to purchase goods and brought back the Wu family. At that time, she still had a big belly and was holding an almost 3-year-old toddler in her hand. Lu's mother was hit hard. Lu's father went out to buy goods, and she was a woman who was busy in and out, taking care of her parents-in-law in the countryside, and taking care of business. She didn't even take care of her young son, who was left to his parents to take care of. She didn't expect her husband to turn around and take him away. Woman. Lu's mother fell ill. After struggling for several years, fighting wits and courage with the Wu family, finally when Lu Bachan was 6 years old, he couldn't stand it any longer and left the young Lu Bachan behind. Lu Bachan's maternal grandparents could not bear the shock of their 2 children passing away one after another, and they passed away one after another within a few years. Lu Bachan became a little pitiful person who had no one to care about. As I got older, my eyes filled with anger when I saw Lu's father, Wu, being affectionate with their 3 children. Gradually, I no longer like staying at home, and I start to entertain cats and dogs, call friends, and stop doing other things. Su Qingying glanced at Lu Bachan. She was surprised that he was not disabled. You can still save it? Lu Bachan noticed Su Qingying's gaze and looked at her face. What's wrong? Su Qingying shook her head. It's okay. After thinking for a while, he asked again, your second brother, are you sure he is your father's? Lu Bachan was a little disdainful and sneered, I hope he is not. But when you see him, you will know that he looks exactly like my father. Otherwise, the family has raised him for 3 years and still can't. Finally, when I saw my father, I kicked them out. This Wu family, tisk tisk, has such a good life. He was not imprisoned in the pig cage by that family, but he was just kicked out and lived a good life. Such luck. While her husband was working outside, she hooked up with Lu's father, who was selling goods, and became pregnant with Lu's father's child, and she dared to give birth to him in that house. 3 years later, Lu's father went to sell goods again and dared to strike up a conversation. Finally, he was caught by the family and the mother and son were kicked out. Tisk tisk, this woman Wu was not punished in the end, and was even held in the palm of Lu's father's hand. She gave birth to 2 sons and 1 daughter to the Lu family. She cleaned up all the stains and straightened her back. Not only did he jump out of the mountain nest, but he also lived a life of counting copper coins every day without touching his fingers. Tisk tisk. In his previous life, he probably gave food to the lucky star. As for that family, they have raised other people's children for 3 years and they still don't know how to be talked about in the village. Father Lu probably also lost a lot of money, which was considered a consolation. Then take the money and marry a good match. Everyone is happy. Only Su Qingying's mother-in-law is miserable. She also admired her mother-in-law. Lu's father had lost all his trousers back then and could hardly save the shop, but under such circumstances, she could still give him all the money and persuade her parents to sell their land to save the shop. In the end, he died early due to mental and physical exhaustion. Should your grandparents have something to explain before they pass away? Madam, she has a tender heart. Author, Bha 11U. Chapter 25. Su Qingying saw that Lu Bachan's eyes were dim, so she hurriedly changed the subject. Lu Bachan came back to his senses and glanced at her. Nodding, he said, before my grandfather left, he left all the family land to me, including the house in the village. When my grandfather passed away, he asked my father to transfer the deed to me, but my grandparents disagreed. Finally, we signed an agreement, and I got half and my father got half. The house we live in now will also be counted as my half when the family is divided. Even so, Wu still doesn't agree, insisting that she has 2 sons and can't get nothing. Lu Bachan's eyes were sarcastic, and it was obvious that he was very dissatisfied with Wu. Wu was like picking up something ready-made, so it was no wonder that Lu Bachan would jump up from time to time. He asked him again, do your grandparents disagree? Su Qingying had never known about Lu's father's family. Talking about them, Lv Bachan's eyes were calm. When I was a child, my mother was busy with the shop and had no time to take care of me, so she left me to my grandparents. At that time, my uncle had passed away and had no children. My grandparents discussed with my father and wanted me to change my surname to Lu, so as to leave a root for the Lu family. My mother's future children will be surnamed Lu, but my grandparents disagreed. My mother is generous. Although she doesn't live in the village, she always brings big bags home every time she goes back. And she is quick and hard-working. My grandparents liked my mother very much at first. But later, when Wu came, she knew how to behave and had a sweet mouth. She took my father's money to be a good person, and gradually coaxed my grandparents to stand on her side. In addition, I didn't live with my grandparents since I was a child, and they also had other grandchildren, and their feelings for me were not as good as other cousins. At that time, my grandfather said that he would pass the shop to me, but they disagreed. Maybe they were afraid that Wu would no longer give them pension money if the shop was gone. It may also be that they were afraid that my father would have a problem with me and not treat me well. Su Qingying sighed after hearing this. This stepmother-in-law might be hard to deal with. She sounds like she is scheming and resourceful. Then he asked, "You didn't ask me to prepare breakfast for your grandparents just now. Didn't they come yesterday?" "They came. But they didn't live here. There's no room at home. My dad rented a big house for them on North Street. They may come back today or tomorrow." "Are there many people in your grandparents' family?" Lu Bachan glanced at her and nodded. "My grandparents gave birth to 3 sons and 2 daughters. My dad is in the middle. The other 2 sons are at the beginning and the end. My eldest uncle's family has 2 sons and 2 daughters, and my younger uncle's family has 3 sons and 1 daughter. Your family is so prosperous. Why don't your grandparents live in the town with you?" Su Qingying sighed. She stroked her forehead. "When there are many people, the relationship is complicated. When the relationship is complicated, she gets a headache. She just wants to live a quiet life. My grandfather is not used to Wu's behavior now, mostly because he thinks she is too coquettish and doesn't live a normal life. My grandmother thinks she is stingy. They live in the village, my father pays for their old age, and the money is in my grandmother's hands. She spends it however she wants, and she can subsidize which children she wants. Her sons and grandchildren have to look at her face. Living here, she still has to get money from Wu and look at Wu's face. Tisk tisk, this grandmother is a smart person." Looked at him again. "Wu, is she very powerful?" LV Bachan disdainfully, "You will know when you see her. No matter how much I say, it's better for you to see it yourself. Tell me first, it won't affect my judgment later." LV Bachan was about to speak, but stopped again. "People are coming." Su Qingying stood up and looked outside the hall. LV Bachan sat still. Su Qingying glanced at him and followed him. It was the first day, so it was not good to disrupt their way of doing things. All the people living in the house came. The first one, Mr. Lu, looked very energetic, tall, slightly fat, with a little belly, serious face, and strode quickly. He glanced at Su Qingying, nodded, and entered the main hall. The next one, Mrs. Wu, was beyond Su Qingying's impression. She looked much younger than she had imagined. She didn't look old at all, unlike someone who had given birth to 3 children. She was light and graceful, and her movements were like a willow in the wind. Tisk tisk, no wonder the original wife was squeezed out. Following Mrs. Wu were her 3 children. The first one was LV Bozu, who was only 2 months younger than LV Bachan. Not as tall as LV Bachan, not as strong as LV Bachan, looking thin and weak, and looked most like Mr. Lu. There was no smile on his face, and he felt a little cold. The next one was LV Yizhu, the only daughter of the Lu family, who was 3 years younger than her brother. She looked very much like Mrs. Wu, and also looked like a willow in the wind. The 2 siblings ignored their brother and sister-in-law, passed by each other, and didn't even look at each other. Only the youngest son, 13-year-old LV Bozong, called him brother and sister-in-law. Su Qingying smiled at him and answered. The young boy seemed to be quite sensible. As soon as Wu entered the main hall, She called Su Qingying over and took her hand to look at her. She glanced at the flower table and praised, "Thank you for your hard work. You made such a big table with so many varieties, including dry and wet dishes, snacks, and soup noodles. His father, look at this, isn't he skillful? Better than me." Father Lu glanced at the table and nodded. He turned his head to look at Su Qingying again, and with satisfaction, he turned around and picked up the teacup to drink tea. LV Bachan had already rushed to the flower table and sat down when Wu came in. Seeing that Wu had said a lot but didn't ask Qingying to sit down together, he pulled Su Qingying over with a stern face and sat next to him. He glared at Wu fiercely again. Normally, he would have gotten up at this time to keep an eye on the shop assistants, fearing that they would be greedy for money. "Sleeping until now? And he's doing better than you. Since you entered the Lu family, you haven't touched water much, right?" He felt disdainful and put a small bun into Su Qingying's bowl, calling her, "Eat." He then picked up the chopsticks and put them into all kinds of bowls and dishes, constantly adding to his and Su Qingying's bowls, and soon it piled up like a small mountain. Su Qingying looked at Lu's father with some embarrassment. As expected, Lu's father frowned and scolded, "What a state! The elders haven't even started eating yet." LV Bachan looked at Lu's father, who had already grabbed the chopsticks in his hand, and said, "You've already started eating, haven't you?" He didn't even glance at Wu. LV's father looked at the chopsticks in his hand, then looked at Wu's hand, and was about to scold Lu Bachan, but Wu smiled and clapped his hands. She tried to smooth things over by saying, "It's okay, it's okay. You're not hungry, but the child is. Eat, eat. Your parents and uncles will all be here soon and they'll recognize you. Why are you so angry with the child so early in the morning?" Lu Bachan stuffed a bun into his mouth while muttering, "How can my father be hungry? He drank too much yesterday and he's only woken up now." Seeing that his father was about to slam the table, Wu quickly put a small bun into his bowl and said, "Eat, eat, don't make fun of the new daughter-in-law. This table looks delicious, and you don't know when you'll get to eat it next time." After that, she smiled and invited Su Qingying to eat. Su Qingying pretended to be shy and lowered her head to eat, without answering. The only sound during the meal was the sound of chopsticks hitting the bowls and plates, and no one spoke. Accustomed to the noisy food culture of the Su family, Su Qingying lowered her voice when she suddenly encountered the cold and solemn scene of the Lu family. She almost had indigestion. After finally finishing the meal, Su Qingying packed up the food in the kitchen, and not long after, the grandparents of the Lu family came with their family. "Madam, she has a tender heart." Author, Bha Jiaoye 11U. Chapter 26. A sea of people, men and women, old and young. The small main room was instantly packed, making movement difficult. Several children were running around the table and bumped into them as soon as they turned around. Su Qingyu was surrounded by a bunch of people looking at her, and she was also dizzy, shouting this and that. A bunch of people were stunned but didn't remember a few. Grandpa Lu Bachan seemed to be a reasonable man. The old man smiled at Su Qingyu and told her to be diligent and thrifty in running the house and to cultivate her moral character. Su Qingyu listened respectfully. Grandpa Lu's status in the family should not be low. The children and grandchildren below seemed to be afraid of him. When his grandson made trouble, he scolded him with a straight face. The children immediately behaved themselves like mice frightened by cats. Lu Bachan's grandmother seems to be kind-hearted. Several children gathered around her clamoring for food, so she grabbed the pastries on the table and put them into the arms of her grandchildren. Finally, she stopped after being scolded by Grandpa Lu. These two old couples are completely different from Su Qingyu's grandparents. The status has declined. As for Lu Bachan's two uncles and two aunts, they don't know what their temperaments are at the moment. A whole family came over, including daughters-in-law, sons-in-law, sons-in-law, grandsons, granddaughters, and so on. Su Qingyu's face froze with laughter. After acknowledging the marriage, Grandpa Lu looked at the noisy people in the room and said to Father Lu, "To make money, I will take them back in a moment. Bo Xiao will go to the battlefield in a few days, and the family must prepare." Su Qingnao took a look at her cousin named Lu Ba Xiao and couldn't help but feel a little sad when she saw that he looked like an honest farmer. When it comes to work in the fields, he might be able to compete with others, but he may not have seen a sword or a gun, let alone touched it. Why? I just hope I can come back alive. Seeing that he, the uncle of the Lu family, and his wife both had sad faces, Su Qingyu couldn't help but sigh again. Fortunately, he got married last year, and now his wife is pregnant. She doesn't know whether it is a boy or a girl, but it is somewhat of a comfort. The eldest aunt of the Lu family was a thin woman. She sadly pulled Lu Bachan and asked him to take more care of this cousin and take care of him on the battlefield. Lu Bachan nodded in agreement. If we can be in the same team, we will naturally take care of each other. At the very least, the difference between life and death depends on the living person bringing news home. Su Qingjao watched him getting along with his family silently. Although his eyes were not his eyes and his nose was not his nose towards Father Lu, his attitude towards his relatives in his hometown was okay. I don't have any resentment towards my grandma. Mom and Dad, don't you want to stay one more night? Otherwise, let my uncle and sister go back first, and you two elders will stay for a few more days. Let us be filial to you for a few days. This new daughter-in-law has just been married, so let her take care of her. Wu said. Su Qingyu glanced at her, lowered her head and said nothing. Lu Bachan said, "Grandma, please stay here. You have been living at my uncle's house and you have to go to the fields every day without rest. You just happen to be relaxing at my dad's place. My second mother told my dad this morning that her cooking is delicious. Grandma left her to take care of her." The whole family looked at Wu. Wu was stunned for a moment, then quickly put a smile on her face and nodded in agreement with Lu Bachan's words. Lu Bozi glanced at Lu Bachan with a sullen face, and Lu Bachan looked back at him sideways. Lu Bozi quickly looked away again. The corners of Lu Bachan's mouth curled up in disdain. Su Qingyu saw Grandpa Lu sighing almost invisible. Seeing that Grandma Lu was a little moved, she scolded, "Don't you have much to do at home? You are taking a break in the town." Grandma Lu muttered, "Bo Cheng is leaving too. I happened to take a few children to stay in the town, and I also made love to him. I don't know when I can see him next time." Grandpa Lu felt as if a big piece was missing in his heart when he thought that his two grandsons had been drafted away. Especially the grandson Lu Bachan, he felt sorry for him. The son brought Mrs. Wu back, but for the sake of Mrs. Wu's two children, he did not stop her from entering. After Mr. Lu passed away, they failed to take care of the motherless child, allowing him to live under the stepmother's eyes for so many years. Wu does a good job on the surface, but just looking at Bo Cheng's attitude towards her, we know that she is not nice to Bo Cheng on weekdays. Otherwise, it would be impossible for a child as good as Bo Cheng to be ungrateful. Lao Lutu sighed deeply in his heart without letting go, and said to his old wife, "Go back first and come back in a few days." "Dad, why don't you stay for a few more days? This will save you the trouble of sending Bo Xiao over in a few days and having to go through all the trouble again," Father Lu said. "No, the children are still young and have no one to take care of them. Your place is small and you can't live in it. It will also cost money to rent a house. We will come back in a few days. It is also convenient to have an ox cart at home." Lao Lutu refused and insisted on leaving. Wu quickly stood up to send it off. Lu Bachan glanced at her and suddenly said to Father Lu, "Dad, why don't you give Uncle some money? My cousin is about to leave. Give me some money so that Uncle can take care of things or buy some clothes for my cousin." Father Lu was stunned for a moment, then nodded and said, I want it. He turned around and told Wu to get the money. Wu glanced at Lu Bachan quickly, and then said to Lu's father, "How much do you want to take?" Old Lutu and Uncle Lu were already refusing. No, no, I still have it at home. I still have some money left from the money you gave me a few days ago. Lu Bachan walked over and took Laolutu's hand. "Master, one code is the same. I gave you the expenses for my wedding banquet a few days ago, and the rest is of course to honor my grandma. When I leave, Grandma bought some candies and snacks in the town to take back to the family for sweet treats." One sentence stopped Laolutu's words. The eldest aunt took Huang, who was bulging with belly, to Lu Bachan and Lu's father to thank her. The mother-in-law and daughter-in-law went to Sukingyu to talk. Neither of them had a smile on their face. Mrs. Huang probably felt that Sukinjeo was in the same boat as her. She had not spoken since she had just entered the room, but now she spoke a few words. Sukingyu looked at the young Huang, 16 or 17 years old, with a bulging belly, sighed in her heart, and comforted her with a few words. Over there, Mrs. Wu and Father Lu looked at each other, then went back to the room to get the money. And Lu Yuzhu had a lot of relatives coming from the countryside, and his face was already full of impatience. Now when she heard that Lu Bachan asked her mother to get the money, she glared at Lu Bachan fiercely. Sukingyu happened to see it and shook her head. This child didn't even learn half of what her mother did. Soon Mrs. Wu came over with a purse and stuffed it into Grandma Lu's arms. The eldest aunt thanked her repeatedly. When the family left, Grandma Lu gave Sukingneo an old silver bracelet, which surprised Sukingneo. She couldn't ask, so she watched Laolutu lead the whole family away. Father Lu and Lu Bachan went to see him off together. It wasn't until Lu Bachan came back that he talked about the origin of this old silver bracelet. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Madam, she has a tender heart. Author, Bhaya 11U. Chapter 27. After all the relatives of the old Lu family left, Mrs. Wu also left with her 3 children. When he left, he had a smile on his face and was very approachable. Let Sukingneo wander around the house and nearby markets to get familiar with it. He also specifically said that the breakfast cooked by Sukingyu was delicious, and he also asked her for dinner. Sukingyu agreed with a smile and watched her leave. When her eldest son and daughter left, they glanced at Sukingyu lightly and left without saying hello. Only the younger one smiled shyly at her. Sukingyu breathed a sigh of relief at the background of their mothers. It wasn't until Lu Bachan came back from seeing someone off that he realized, she didn't seem to let me prepare lunch. My father usually doesn't eat lunch at home. Wu and her children sometimes eat and sometimes don't. I almost never eat lunch at home. Where do you eat? Well, drinking wine outside. No, no. Either in the martial arts gym or with Juyi and the others. After speaking, he wiped his forehead. Sukingyu looked at him sideways. I'm serious. Lu Bachan almost broke into a cold sweat with this look in his eyes. I didn't say what you said was false. Then you look at me like that. Sukingyu didn't respond. He lowered his head and looked at his hand. This old silver bracelet, your grandma looked a little strange just now. Lu Bachan looked at her hand with a sad look in his eyes. My mother gave this to me the day after she got married. She has been wearing it on her hand all these years. After hearing this, Sukingyu looked at her hand. She held it in her right hand and turned it around. She saw that it was engraved with patterns of bats and auspicious clouds. It was a bit heavy, and there should be 3 or 5 tails. The color had turned black and lacked luster. After thinking about it, he took it off and said, send it to a jewelry store another day to blow it up and put it away as a souvenir. Lu Bachan glanced into her palm and nodded. Seeing that his mood was a little low, Sukingyu looked at the bracelet, thought about it, and said, "Should we go see your mother and burn some paper money for her?" Lu Bachan was stunned for a moment, looked at her, and shook his head. "Let's find another day before I leave." Sukingyu nodded. Then he asked him, "Your stepmother asked me to prepare dinner. You can take me out for a while and I will buy some ingredients." When Lu Bachan heard this, he bared his teeth and said, "Mr. Wu, I have to let you cook dinner even if I don't use the helper I paid the monthly fee for. She has a sweet face but a bitter heart, and is full of calculations. It's a pity that my father can't see you." Sukingyu rolled her eyes at him. "How can she not be upset when you stand in front of her with such a grown-up person, reminding her of her identity and her disgraceful past all the time? Besides, she lives with your father, and she doesn't just live with you as long as your father is happy." 6. Upon hearing this, Lu Bachan took a few steps forward angrily, leaving Sukingyu behind. Sukingyu rolled her eyes, childishly. "If you insist on finding a sense of existence, you will make yourself uncomfortable. Follow him slowly." After taking 2 steps, I heard him say again, "I will accompany you out in a while." The corners of Sukingyu's mouth curled up. The two of them went back to their room to tidy up a little, and then went out onto the street. Lu Bachan took to the streets like a fish in water. "I have been around Fengting town since I was a child, and I have a good connection with the market. I can tell you about every corner of the alley. The sense of direction is also very good." Sukingyu became dizzy after walking around for a few times. Every store she looked at seemed like she had been there before. Fengting town has a large population and is divided into 4 districts: southeast, northwest, and southeast. The main street is also divided into 4 districts. The Lu family lives in the west district and their shop is on the south street. Sukingyu took notes along the way, afraid of getting lost. Along the way, Lu Bachan has learned many treasures. He introduced various shops to Sukingyu, including which one had the fairest prices and products, what kind of personality the shopkeeper had, which shop was stealing a lot, and which shop had any gossip. For example, the shopkeeper of the wine shop he often went to was henpecked. I told Sukingyu all about it. "Well, Lu Bachan, you actually said behind your back that shopkeeper Wang is henpecked. Let's see if shopkeeper Wang will sell you wine next time." Lu Bachan was unexpectedly slapped from behind. He took a step forward, quickly stopped, and turned around to look. They saw Lu Juyi, Guanwei, and Lu Yazu standing behind Lu Bachan, arm in arm, looking at him with smiles. Sukingyu also recognized them. The first time she met Lu Bachan, the 4 of them were drinking in a bar. It can be seen that they have a good relationship. At this time, Lu Bachan had reacted and started laughing with them. After a while, Lu Bachan took them to Sukingyu and introduced her. "Hello." Sukingyu smiled and nodded to them. Well, Lu Juyi and the other 3 saw that Sukingyu was not shy at all, but was open and generous, and looked at their faces, still having this strange way of greeting them. They all looked at her curiously. "I feel like she's not that hot girl anymore." "Where are you looking?" Lu Bachan stood in front of Sukingyu with a straight face and waved his fist at them. The 3 of them hid with smiles and said in unison, "You also said that shopkeeper Wang is henpecked." "Look at you, tisk. What are you talking about?" Several people got into trouble again. "You go with them, I can wander around by myself." Seeing the 4 of them looking like they had something to say, Sukingyu said. Lu Bachan turned to look at her. "I'll go shopping with you first." "No, I can just wander around by myself." Seeing Sukingyu's persistence, Lu Bachan had no choice but to watch her go. Tisk, are you still Lu Bachan? You went out as a couple on the first day of your wedding. You were afraid that people wouldn't know about your good relationship. They also said that shopkeeper Wang was henpecked. I think you were taken care of last night, too. Several people laughed together and looked at him jokingly. Lu Bachan rolled his eyes at his friends and walked away. How many more days can I stay with her? Maybe it's just these few days. As soon as this was mentioned, the atmosphere suddenly became cold. Lu Jui felt a little sad when he looked at the three friends around him who were going to the battlefield together. Smiling, he hooked his shoulders towards them. Let's go and have a drink with shopkeeper Wang. His wife won't come to the wine shop now, so it's just right for him to have a few sips with us. A few people gathered their emotions and went to the wine shop together. And Su Qingnao continued shopping. She had just visited some shops and probably understood some of them. Thinking about cooking tonight, I was going to have a look at the vegetable market. Before she could get closer, she heard a roaring noise and saw someone pushing in the distance. Madam, she has a tender heart. Author, Bhaya 11U. Chapter 28. Seeing the quarrel and pushing in front of them, Su Qingyu stopped and looked. I saw that this vegetable market was very crowded. The vegetables and livestock brought by farmers in the countryside are placed randomly on the ground. If conditions permit, a board is put on the board. If conditions are better, there is a cart, and they are placed on the cart. The vegetables were picked and pushed all the way, and the vegetable leaves were a little wilted. People splashed them with water from time to time, making the whole street a little wet. Add to this the excrement of domestic animals, the feathers shed by poultry and wild animals, as well as the mosquitoes attracted by the scraps thrown away by fish sellers and meat sellers. The whole street looked crowded and dirty. Su Qingnao saw many well-dressed women passing by with handkerchiefs covering their noses. They hurriedly turned around and left without even picking something. They didn't even count the money they got back. There are also some people who don't care about the environment, maybe they are used to it, and they choose at the vegetable stalls and bargain with the farmers, which is lively and lively. Looking at the quarrel and pushing place, a bunch of people gathered around. After listening for a while, Su Qingyu also understood. It turned out that a few gangsters came early in the morning to collect the stall protection fee. A farmer had to pay a large sum of money for the chickens, ducks, and vegetables he brought before he sold them. He was a little unhappy and started to quarrel with the farmer. The neighboring villagers couldn't stand it, so they helped him by saying a few words. The gangster hit him with a stick, and the two sides started fighting. Su Qingyu looked at the farmer's stall and saw a cage on the ground. Inside, 2 chickens and a duck could be seen vaguely with their feet tied and their wings clipped. Next to the chicken coop is half a basket of eggs and half a box of vegetables. Some of them must have been sold. You may not earn much if you sell them all, and the protection fee will be 50 cents. A penny is very important to the farmers. They may have walked dozens of miles in the morning, pushing and shouldering the ground to sell money. The money they got was not enough to pay the protection fee, but they were impatient. We're not saying we won't pay the protection fee, but it's too much. We can't even make so much in the morning. The old farmer begged weakly, hunched over. The 2 half-year-old grandchildren were close to him, pinching the corners of his clothes with fear on their faces. Stop talking nonsense. If you only sell vegetables, we will charge you 10 cents, but look at you, you are selling poultry. Look at what was made for you on this ground. And we came to see it this morning. You picked out a cage of chickens and ducks, at least 7 or 8 of them, and I charge you 50 cents. It's all for the sake of the fellow villagers, so I won't forget you. The old man waved his hands repeatedly. No, not that many. I only brought 4 chickens and 1 duck. There are 3 more that have not been sold. Each one only earns a few hard-earned money. Those bastards didn't listen. Stop talking nonsense. If you don't pay, we will take away your cage of chickens and ducks. No way. When the old man heard that the chickens and ducks were about to be taken away, he became anxious and subconsciously threw himself on the chicken coop. The people watching the excitement whispered. This group of people is really going to eat people. All their hard-earned money this morning has gone into their pockets. Isn't it? No one is taking care of this. If the villagers don't dare to sell vegetables, what will the people in our town eat? That is to say, it is enough to charge only 2 or 3 cents. Why do you charge so much? I think the ground is dirty, as if they can clean it up after charging money. Some people who didn't know the truth looked at a few gangsters and asked the people next to them, are they from the county government? Some of the onlookers looked disdainful. Where did the county government come from in our town? There are some casual officials sent by the county government in our town. Well, they are the scholars from the Liu family in Chien Street. But they didn't say to invite anyone to come. Protection fee. This group of people is here to rob it? Su Qingyu listened for a while and finally understood the whole story. She looked at the street carefully and thoughtfully. When she came to her senses again, several gangsters had walked away in high spirits with sticks on their shoulders. When passing by her, Su Qingyu felt that one of them looked familiar. She turned around and took a closer look. Hey, he looked familiar. Some time ago, Su's mother kept talking about the widowed leopard girl in the village, saying how sad her life was as a widow with a son. Xiao Qingyang and Xiao Qingxing also kept talking about the leopard, saying that all the children in the village were afraid of it. In those days, the vegetables in the Su family's vegetable patch kept disappearing inexplicably, and her step-grandma cursed in the direction of Huabao's house for several days. As a result, Su Qingnao was very familiar with the name Huabao. Looking at the leopard again, he looks like a human and a dog, and his clothes are also bright. Looking at the age of 23 or 4, he looks like a ruffian. Because of their behavior, no one in the nearby countryside wanted to marry into his family. As a result, even though he is a grown-up, he is still single. Huabao's mother was the only one with him. She begged her grandfather and grandma to find him a matchmaker, but no matchmaker, no matter how greedy for money, would come to his door. When the person you say you're close to hears that it's his home, they won't even open the door. At this moment, Su Qingnao saw that he was looking agitated. He was holding a half-meter-long polished stick in one hand and tapping the palm of his other hand from time to time as he passed by her. Maybe he noticed Su Qingyu's gaze and looked towards Su Qingyu, maybe he thought Su Qingyu looked familiar, and even frowned in thought. Su Qingyu didn't want to deal with him and quickly looked away, but the other party didn't stop. It wasn't until the group of them had gone far that Su Qingyu moved to the vegetable market. Look at the old man who was charged 50 cash, holding his 2 grandchildren in his arms and wiping away tears. His grandson, who was 12 or 13 years old, lowered his head, tightly holding the rope of the chicken coop in his hand, pursed his lips, and his eyes were full of hatred. The younger granddaughter held the old man's arm and avoided the eyes of the onlookers. Su Qingyu sighed softly. There are 3 chickens and ducks in that cage, but they can only be sold for 50 cents. If they are taken away, the gain outweighs the loss. Looking at the stall on the ground, after paying the money, I'm afraid there won't be much money left for today's hard work. Su Qingyu looked at the chickens and ducks in his cage and found that they were well raised. The feathers were shiny and smooth. The eggs in the basket had also been wiped clean. Although the vegetables in the vegetable frame had been turned around, they were clearly visible. When I came out, the vegetables were grown very well, and there were not many insect holes. When Su Qingyu looked at the 3 of them, the onlookers gathered around him and bought everything from his stall out of sympathy for the family. The old man reacted, weighed the weight, and thanked the buyer. After being comforted by everyone in turn, the 3 people's moods became much calmer. They wiped their tears and quickly helped the buyer bundle chickens, ducks, and vegetables. In the end, half of the basket of eggs was bought by an ant. The old man and his family packed up their burdens with great gratitude, supported each other, and left the vegetable market in a hurry. Su Qingyu looked a little sad. The people at the bottom, who have no money and no power, have the hardest time. Su Qingyu slowly strolled around the vegetable market. I found that the variety is quite rich, including fish, meat, poultry and game, various eggs, mountain delicacies, river fresh food, and many varieties of vegetables. But there is just no good plan. The whole street was crowded and dirty, and there were so many people shopping around the stalls that it was difficult to even walk. The farmers crowded around and put the things they brought randomly on the ground. There were water stains, dirt, and mosquitoes on the ground. Some places with lots of water were so muddy that it was difficult to even set foot on them. The farmer has a pair of straw sandals, his clothes are dusty, and there are patches piled on top of each other. If they get dirty, they just get dirty, and they don't care. But most of the people who came out to buy in the town were wealthy and had cloth shoes on their feet. The women wore long skirts. When they stepped on them, their shoes became dirty and water got in, and their clothes were splashed with mud and water. Many people walked on tiptoe, screaming when they stepped on the water, holding their clothes and shaking off, and frowning on their faces. Sukingneo walked around and the experience was really not good. I bought some ingredients, my hands were full, and I was ready to go back. With both hands occupied, I couldn't free my hands to hold up the hem of my skirt, so I could only walk slowly on tiptoes. After passing through a muddy road, I looked down and saw that my cloth shoes were soaked, the footwear underneath was also soaked in water, and the hem of my skirt was also full of mud spots. Just as he was frowning, the ingredients in his hand were snatched away. Madam, she has a tender heart. Author, Bhaya 11U. Chapter 29. How did you come? Why did you buy so much? Lu Bachan said as he took the things over. For this big family, I bought enough to feed you. And this is only a small amount. I haven't bought the home gift for tomorrow yet. Sukingyu relaxed her hands, breathed a sigh of relief, and shook her hands. Then she lowered her head to look at the hem of her skirt. She picked it up and shook it. A lot of mud splashed on it, her shoes were soaked in water, and her footwear was wet. She felt a little uncomfortable. Turning around and looking at the vegetable market street, I saw that it was still lively and busy with people coming and going. What are you looking at? Nothing, just some ideas. What idea? I haven't thought about it yet. I still have to think about it. Seeing that she didn't say anything more, Lu Bachan didn't ask any more questions. Seeing her patting her clothes, he asked again, eat first or go back first? Sukingyu's footwear and clothes in her shoes were all wet and she felt uncomfortable walking, so she said, go back and change your clothes, shoes, and socks before you come out. I also want to buy a homecoming gift for tomorrow. I guess your stepmother won't know how to do it, it's prepared for us. You still count on her, Lu Bachan sneered. Seeing his disdainful look, Sukingyu looked at his hands again. In this moment, she bought a lot of things, including ingredients and seasonings for dinner. It cost her more than a tael of silver. Asked, where is the helper Aunt Jo? Does your stepmother give her money to buy it or does your stepmother go and buy it herself? Aunt Jo bought it herself. It was Wu who bought it at first. She was so stingy that she was afraid that Aunt Jo would lie about the price of the vegetables. But she didn't buy it for a few days before she stopped. She said that the vegetable market was dirty and messy, and the smell was not good. It smells so good that she feels sorry for her clothes and shoes. Tisk tisk, Wu, a poor girl in the mountains who couldn't even buy a piece of clothing, was not in a good situation after getting married, but as soon as she met Lu's father, she became a young mistress. Then if she still lets me cook in the future, do you think I should ask her for household money? These things in your hand cost me more than one tael. Sukingyu felt a little distressed. She packed the box with only 2 taels of silver. Lu Bachan had only saved more than a dozen taels over the years, and she spent several more. The rest she wanted to take with him when he left. Then she will be clean. If the Wu family still doesn't give her family income, then she won't do it. Lu Bachan was stunned for a moment before he realized that the heavy thing in his hand was all spent by the young couple. He was so angry that he waved his hands twice. "I'll go find her when I get back. No, if I don't find her, I'll go directly to Lu Shenke. It's the first day we recognized each other, but he didn't say anything and wanted to spend my money. I have to shave him off when I go back." Su Qingyu found it a little funny when she saw his angry and childish look. Wu didn't realize it at all. Lu Bachan didn't even get half a penny from the shop, and he didn't even give him a monthly salary. He had saved more than a dozen taels by himself for more than 10 years, and now he still wanted to spend his money. "Don't be too impatient." The two returned to Lu's house, and Su Qingyu went to change clothes. Fortunately, she used the money given by Lu Bachan to pull several pieces of cloth and make several sets of clothes that day, otherwise she wouldn't have been able to replace them. She got married and came to the town, and she was still wearing the same patched clothes that she used to wear. She was too embarrassed to go out. As soon as Su Qingyu changed clothes and packed up, Lu Bachan came back. He shook the silver in his hand at her with a proud look on his face. "Lu Shenke only wanted to give me 2 taels, so I picked him 10 taels. He was so angry. He also said that doing business is not easy. Bah, a grocery store can't make much money, but Wu and her Fuyu kid doesn't spend enough. He makes clothes and buys jewelry every month, and it's like I'm cutting out his flesh for just a little bit." Su Qingyu saw him leaning on the chair and throwing the purse in his hand, looking unconcerned. Suddenly I felt a little distressed. A child who doesn't have a mother to love him won't know how to cry. The more he goes against his temper to show his presence, the more annoying he will be. It's not easy to live to such an old age. "Why are you looking at me?" Lu Bachan turned around and asked. "You look good." Lu Bachan blushed when he heard this. You. Throwing the purse in his hand on the table, "Hurry up, take your time, I've even returned from a trip to South Street, and you're not ready yet." Su Qingyu rolled her eyes. This man didn't deserve her heartache. "Put away your purse and go out." The two of them left Lu's house and found a small shop that Lu Bachan said was small but delicious. They went in and ordered 2 dishes, and then they started eating. "It's delicious." "Yeah, what I said is right." Although this store is inconspicuous, it has been open in the town for more than 10 years. It has good taste and large quantities, and the price is not expensive. Most people can't find this place. Lu Bachan I boasted a few words. He didn't even swallow the food in his mouth, and said, "If you don't want to eat at home in the future, come here. The boss is nice, his work is meticulous, and he is also clean and hygienic." When Su Qingyu nodded and looked at the small shop, the shopkeeper heard Lu Bachan's words, came over and said with a smile, "You still know how to eat, is this your newlywed wife?" Lu Bachan hurriedly introduced Su Qingyu to the store. Both parties greeted each other. The shopkeeper smiled and said to Su Qingyu, "From now on, when Mr. Lu is not here, you can just come here alone. Whatever you want to eat, I will cook it for you." Su Qingyu smiled and nodded. After the two of them finished eating and were walking on the road, Lu Bachan told the story of this store. "My son died on the battlefield and has not come back for 7 or 8 years. The couple didn't believe their son was dead, so they never moved away. The daughter-in-law ran away, so the couple took their grandchildren and kept the shop open, saying they would wait for their son to come back." Su Qingyu looked back at this small shop with some emotion. This dynasty would recruit troops from time to time. After expelling foreign enemies, civil war would start. After the civil war, the border would become unstable again, so troops would be recruited from time to time. It is the common people who suffer. What is dead, and the days of living must still be lived. The two of them went shopping and bought a home gift for tomorrow. Being introduced along the way by Lu Bachan, Su Qingyu knew a lot about Fengting town. At dinner, Su Qingyu's craftsmanship was praised by the family. As soon as Wu started talking and was about to squeeze Suqingyu into letting her continue cooking, Lu Baqin pushed her down. Niang, you know that you asked my wife to cook. Do you want to give me today's expenses? You can't ask my wife to use the dowry to support a family in the future, right? What kind of dowry can she have? 15-year-old Lu Yizhu asked. There was no hint of respect for the eldest sister-in-law in her words. She doesn't have a dowry, so she wasn't hired by your mother? Now you're here to pick a fight? I heard that your mother has gone to the county to find a sister-in-law for your brother. I'm afraid she can bring a lot of dowry to our family, which may not be good in the future. Your mother can help you pick out the next one. Lu Baqin scolded Lu Yizhu. You, Lu Yizhu glared at him angrily. Father Lu slapped the table hard, you can't eat well. He glanced at Lu Baqin and said, didn't I give you today's flowers? You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Madam, she has a tender heart. Author, Bhyaoye 11U. Chapter 30. Chapter 30 Gold Ingot. Lu Baqin glanced at Father Lu and said mischievously, did you give it to me? Aren't those 10 taels of silver used to pay for the tuition of the Yangui Martial Arts Hall? The director of the gymnasium spent so much effort teaching your son so that your son can do more on the battlefield. You can't bear to pay tuition for 2 days, aren't you too stingy? Everyone is working for a living in the town, so you can't stand up in front of Director Ma, tisk tisk. Lu's father was so angry at his rebuke, but Lu Baqin shook his legs happily when he saw that Lu's father was gasping for breath. Get him 2 taels of silver, Lu's father said to Wu. 2 taels are not enough. Isn't 2 taels of food on this table enough? Are you trying to get it into your own pocket? Lu Bozu said with a sullen face. Lu Baqin saw Lu Bozu jump up and looked at him with squinted eyes. I'm not like you. I think of ways to get money every day, and if I can't get it, I go to the shop to get it. I buy paper, ink, and ask for money. Teachers and classmates have meals and gifts, so you have a lot of money at home. You. What am I? What I said is wrong. Okay, what's going on? Why do you still need money if the 2 taels are not enough? Lu Shenke interrupted the 2 cross-eyed sons and asked with a headache. 2 taels is food money, what about the money to buy the home gift tomorrow? I'm going there naked? If the 2 younger brothers marry the wife in the future, and each house prepares the home gift by itself, then I have nothing to say. And tomorrow, the wife my cousin is getting married, so why don't I give you some gift money? Besides, which martial arts school only charges 10 taels of silver for teaching? You have the nerve to give it? Besides, I have already sacrificed my life for my family to go to the battlefield, so I have to buy some clothes and buy a handy weapon? Or do you wish you could? As soon as your eldest son went to the battlefield, he went to find your poor first wife? Speak properly, Father Lu shouted at Lu Baqin. Lu Baqin sneered and shook his legs without looking at him. Didn't you say that your master treats you as his son? He hasn't paid any tuition fees for so long. Wu suddenly said. When Lu Baqin heard this, his legs stopped shaking and he sneered at her, my master doesn't charge tuition. That's because he's doing it well. Look at me, I'm pitiful. No one cares or loves me. Our Lu family is about paying attention to others, not being behind the scenes. If my master doesn't mention it, how can we be regarded as people who flirt with others and do dirty things? Besides, our family is not rich, and your Lu Dong family doesn't want to be in Fengting town. Got fooled. Father Lu became even more angry at Lu Baqin's words. He glared at Mrs. Wu and said angrily to Lu Baqin, you can come to me to get it later. Okay. Dad, you are so generous. Your son is about to go to the battlefield to fight for his life. If you don't spend some money for him, you will never see your eldest son in the future. What if you think about it in the future and never see him again? Yo. Father Lu was so shocked by what he said that he didn't even eat anymore. He took down his chopsticks and got up and left. Wu glanced at Lu Bachan and followed suit. Lu Yuzhi glared at Lu Bachan fiercely, threw away her chopsticks and left. Lu Bozu ignored his brother and sister-in-law as usual, straightened his back and walked out. Lu Bozong seemed not to have eaten enough yet. Seeing that his parents and siblings were gone, while his eldest brother and sister-in-law were still sitting at the table, he felt a little at a loss. He took a big mouthful of rice into his mouth, stood up, and said vaguely, "I'm full, brother and sister-in-law, you eat slowly." After that, he ran away. Before Sukingyu could recover, everyone was gone. "What are you looking at? Eat quickly." Wu's mother and son left, which did not affect Lu Bachan in the slightest, and his appetite improved a lot. Facing a table of dishes, he greeted Sukingyu. "Tisk, tisk, you just said so much, you are not afraid of your father getting angry and beating you?" Lu Bachan was not afraid of the sky or not, "I'm afraid of him. It is best to lame me, just don't have to go to the battlefield, change his favorite second son. Eat what he has and use what he has. Gee, this ambition is really great." She also wanted to lie down and be a salted fish. It's a pity that looking at this guy's appearance, she can't lie down for a while. After washing up in the evening, when Sukingneo was about to lie down in bed, Lu Bachan came back to the room and threw a purse to her. "Did your father get you money?" "How much?" Sukingyu asked while pouring out the broken silver from her purse. There was no broken silver, but a large ingot of gold rolled out. Sukingyu was stunned. "Gold? Look at you like that. Have you never seen gold?" Lu Bachan looked down on her. "Look. It's gold. I've never seen such a big ingot before." "How much is it?" Sukingyu picked up the ingot of gold and looked left and right. The golden brilliance of the gold almost blinded her eyes, and she barely managed to put it in her mouth. I took a bite to confirm the authenticity. 5 taels. 5 taels? Isn't that just 50 taels of silver? Is your father so generous today?" Lu Bachan leaned on his chair and sneered, "His son is going to the battlefield, and he might be going to see my poor mother soon. Is he still reluctant to equip me with a handy weapon? He is afraid that my mother will stay in the middle of the night. I came here to find him. I was also afraid of being stabbed in the spine." Sukingyu fell silent. Putting the ingot of gold back into his purse, "Why don't you need any silver or banknotes? It's hard to spend such a big ingot. And are these enough to buy you a handy outfit? Good weapons have always been expensive. The gold I want is for you. I will pack it in a box for you and leave it to our son in the future." Sukingneo rolled her eyes at him after hearing this, but in one night, she might not even have a tadpole, but she could still have a son. But I was inexplicably moved. "You gave it to me, but you don't want to buy the clothes anymore. Whatever outfit I want is provided by the imperial court. Besides, the new recruit Danzi brings a lot, but they are just left to be searched by the veteran Yuzi and the people above." Sukingyu was silent. "Then you can prepare a short and inconspicuous pair for self-defense." "No need. My master has a dagger that can cut hair with blowing. Please help me defend myself when the time comes." Speaking of his master, Sukingyu looked at his purse and asked him, "Then don't you have to give your master a bundle of repair money?" "No, my master takes me in because he really likes me. He will get angry if I give him money. If master doesn't like me, he won't accept it even if others come to ask for money." "That." Lu Bachan glanced at her and said, "When the time comes, when I leave, I will take you to meet my master, so that he and his fellow apprentices can get to know you, so that I can take care of you after I leave." Okay, she also wanted to get to know Master Ma. Lu Bachan had no mother since he was a child, and his father didn't care much about it. Fortunately, he had a master who was willing to teach him some skills. After Sukingyu put the purse away, Lu Bachan threw another purse to her. Sukingyu rolled her eyes at him. What is this? Money. Can't you give it to me all at once? I just put it away. Lu Bachan also rolled his eyes at her. You only have money in your eyes. Otherwise. You don't want money. After saying that, he squeezed the purse in his hand. It feels wrong in the hand. It's not silver? Is it a banknote? Lu Bachan looked like she had fallen into the eyes of money. Your son's father is still living at home. Where can I get you a banknote? Tisk tisk, my son's father. I don't even know if the tadpole has found his home yet. What's that look in your eyes? Lu Bachan asked, turning sideways when he saw Sukingyu squinting at him in an indescribable place. Looking at trash. What? Lu Bachan thought he didn't hear clearly. Nothing. After Sukingyu finished speaking, she opened her purse and looked at it. There were 3 deeds. A land deed, a field deed and a house deed. Thanks to those who voted and for the support. Your support is my biggest motivation for coding. During this period, epidemics occur frequently in many places, so everyone should take precautions when going out. Madam, she has a tender heart. Author, Bhyaoye 11U. Chapter 31. Seeing Sukingyu reading the deed seriously, Lu Bachan asked the question in his heart, are you literate? He read the agreement so seriously last time. I can't read. Upon hearing this, Lu Bachan hurriedly stood up from his chair, approached her, and stared at her face. Of course you can read, but given your family's conditions, can your step-grandmother allow you to read? Sukingyu pushed him away. You don't care how I know how to read. I know no less than a scumbag like you. After saying that, she gave him a look of disdain. Lu Bachan touched his nose. What kind of scum? Do you think he can't understand? Doesn't it mean that he doesn't study hard and has no fame? Snort. He has no talent for reading. But he also worked hard when he was a child. His father always praised his second brother for his good study. He was unwilling to accept it and read day and night, just to gain some reputation. But in the end there was no fight. Later, when his father looked at him like he couldn't hold himself up against the wall, he gave up completely. What can I do if I can't read well? Can we afford less food and clothing? Not just in front of his beloved son. He is the eldest son. If he were in a rich family, his beloved son would be a bastard. He is the proper first wife and eldest son. What could his concubines have to do with family property and such? However, he regretted it when he learned that he was going to be drafted into the battlefield. I regret that I was angry with Lu Shenke in the past and did not study hard to get a good name. In the future, if I have a son, I must let him study hard and get a good reputation, Lu Bachan said with some emotion. Sukingyu glanced at him. Son, I don't know if you have that kind of luck. Even if you have that kind of luck, you may not be a son. It's okay if it's a daughter. Let her find a son-in-law with a good reputation in the future, so that my grandson won't have to fight for his life on the battlefield. Thinking long-term. Sukingyu ignored him and turned over some deed papers in her hand. Xiahe village? Your grandfather's. Lu Bachan leaned over and took a few deed papers from her hand, staring at them with nostalgia in his eyes. My grandfather gave them to me when he left, saying they were for me to keep. When I was a child, Mrs. Wu even encouraged my father to take them away. My father saw that I wouldn't give them to him and didn't force them. But I was still young at that time. Over the years, my father hired someone to rent the land in my grandfather's house, and he also collected the rent money. You never asked for it? Why do you want it? I don't want Mrs. Wu to say that I am eating free rice at home. I have to let her know that what I eat is the money left to me by my grandfather, not like the 3 children she gave birth to. A real freeloader. Tisk, tisk, so arrogant. Isn't that right for a minor son to eat from his father? He also spent his own money to eat and drink, just to get angry with his stepmother. Then, of course we will take care of it ourselves in the future. I am already married and have a wife and children to support. Besides, I will no longer eat from the family. Is it possible that the wife I married will not be supported by the Lu family, mother-in-law and my own dowry? I told my father before we got married that I will keep the rent from now on. Aren't you afraid that Wu will cause trouble? Humph, what's so fussy about her? In the past 10 years, I have had leftovers from the 10 acres of land owned by my grandfather's family. If it weren't for the fact that we couldn't buy property without dividing the family, she would have given birth to her. Those who have bought land have already become jealous when they look at my more than 10 acres of land. Even if they don't buy any land, they still make a lot of money for themselves. Su Qingyu felt a little funny when she saw his angry look. Did you also get those dozen taels of silver from your father? They all get it, why don't I get it? If I don't get it, my dad won't take the initiative to give it to me. Even if I ask for it from him, he still asks here and there. Those who ask for it from him are very generous. Snort. When I was a child, I was stupid and didn't bother to reach out to him to ask for money. But I couldn't bear to see those few who would act coquettishly with him from time to time and ask for money, buy food and groceries, and even go out of their way to get in front of me. My father, if I don't ask him for it, he thinks I don't want it. Those guys want Qin, but I can't afford it even if I save money for him, so why don't I want it? In the early years, when I got money, I went out to drink with friends. I spent it here and there but didn't save much. I only had a dozen taels in my hand. Is that all you gave me that day? Didn't you keep some for yourself? Su Qingyu asked him. Am I that kind of person? I gave it all to you. Su Qingyu smiled, what if I run out of money? Lu Bachan looked like he didn't care, you can spend it as long as you spend it. If I give it to you, it's yours. If I run out of money in the future, I'll ask Lu Shenke for it. It makes no sense for me to risk my life and let my wife support herself. Su Qingyu looked at him deeply, and her heart moved slightly. After a long time, he said, from now on, I will manage your grandfather's farm well and find some way to earn some money. What does it look like for my daughter-in-law to ask your father for money? Lu Bachan didn't care, that's what he should give. If he is sensible, he should tell Wu to give you money every month. Like a wealthy family, give us monthly money instead of us asking for it from him. But Wu, that person is stingy, even if Lu Shenke tells her, she may not be willing to give you money. After saying that, seeing that Su Qingyu didn't say anything, he asked her again, what do you want to do? Open a shop like my father. I didn't think about it. Lu Bachan glanced at her, it's very hard to open a shop. You have to look after the store and purchase goods. You also have to make things difficult for customers with bad tempers. When you marry into the Lu family, you have to show your face to earn money. What have I become? Even Lu Shenke can't save his face. You can keep the land rented by my grandfather and save some money. Even if you have children in the future, it will be enough. Besides, Lu Shenke will not see you without food. Food. Su Qingyu rolled her eyes at him. It was not her character to reach out and ask people for money. The mother-in-law is not a relative, so what does it look like for a daughter-in-law to reach out to her father-in-law to ask for money? She couldn't do it. Then he said, you don't have to think too much about me, I will figure it out myself. You should think about how to survive on the battlefield. Being a widow has a bad reputation. Lu Bachan fell silent after hearing this. Didn't he want to live? He wants to live. As soon as he lay on the bed, he couldn't close his eyes just thinking about how he would look like a bloody mess with his body and head missing on the battlefield. Su Qingyu put away the deed paper and saw that he was still silent. She thought about it and said, I got a military book before. Book of War? Really? Lu Bachan's eyes lit up. Su Qingyu avoided his shining eyes. It should be true. I will go back to my parents' house tomorrow to look for it. Okay, go back and look for it. Although I am not good at reading, I can still read military books. My master has been fighting on the battlefield for many years and has also taught me some. I love listening to military books and strategies the most. As for military books, she can write one silently, but even if she goes back tomorrow, there won't be any ready-made ones. Forget it, don't think about it anymore, we'll talk about it when we go back tomorrow. Sleep. Ah, sleeping. You haven't said how you can read yet? How did you get the military book? Lu Bachan kept chattering to Su Qingyu, who had climbed into bed. Seeing that she had put down the curtain, he thought for a moment, it doesn't matter what the military book is, he can get it when he returns to Yu's house tomorrow. The most important thing now is to give birth to a son. Doesn't the lady want a son? Well, he will definitely work hard later. The wife must have felt that she would be too lonely after he left, so she wanted a child by her side. Well, having a son is more important. After Lu Bachan figured it out, he forgot about the military strategy and hurriedly went to bed to give birth to his son. Su Qingyu cooperated with his movements. Her mind was confused. Why did she feel that she and Lu Bachan felt like an old married couple? We had only known each other for a short time, we had barely met each other a few times, and we had only been married for 2 days. Damn it! Forget it, men are not important, a person is too lonely in this era, just eating and waiting to die, without any sense of expectation. Let's just have a son and have fun. Daughter. Also,